Elections, they're such a waste of time, aren't they? I can understand how a lot of people think it's pointless to vote because then you're voting in a system you don't agree with. And I mean, I was one of those people once upon a time as well, until I got involved in politics. And then I realized how terribly rotten the system is. And like literally, not just a hunch, not just a feeling, not just a vibe, but literally saw how rotten it is. And then I started OWN. So Organic Humanity Movement is a movement first and foremost, a movement of people that want to live in freedom. Our principles of freedom, all of what we like to call individual liberty, respect for the earth, protection of life, self-reliance, continuous progress, and national sovereignty. Those are the principles that we want society to be governed by. And yeah, I started this movement to improve how we live by improving the systems that govern society. And one of the things that's important to note is you can't not participate in the current system. That's the problem that we have. This is a theme that's coming up time and time again. People feel like exiting the system in any way, shape, or form is going to somehow make things better, but the logic just does not add up. And so we found a loophole in which we could use constitutional processes, such as elections, to change how this country is governed. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, that as flawed as the current constitution is, we have that wiggle room to use the system for system reform. And I would love for more people to catch that vision and jump on board, get involved in any capacity that they possibly can. So what I wanted to do tonight is just cover a couple of questions that have been asked in the comments, because I thought, if someone's asking something, it's probably a concern or question or comment that's shared by multiple people. So hopefully I'll answer more of your questions by going through this process. And yeah, if you want to know more about OWN, go to the website, own.org.za. The first little button on the website, right at the top, is actually the manifesto, our national manifesto, which outlines very briefly. It was my goal to keep the manifesto as short as possible. I've gone through the process of reading other parties' manifestos in the past, and it's really just laborious and often statements that aren't substantiated. So I really had this goal to make it as little, as few pages as possible, and I think we've achieved that. So you can go read the manifesto just to get the outline of all the different changes that we want to make in the system. And there's the voting method itself. It's changing the political system. It's changing the government structure. It is changing Chapter 9 institutions. There's a lot going on. So have a read just to get a broad overview. But before you do that, I'll answer some of your questions from the comments, and please continue to engage. If you have further questions, let me know. And let's debate this. If you feel like there's better alternatives, better ideas, do let me know. Here's the first one. So in the last video that I did, I spoke about how when I left the party I was with, I considered all the others that are currently in Parliament. Like, who could I join? Because I really loved the work of politics, the idea that policy formation can positively impact the lives of ordinary South Africans. However, in the party I was in, I did not see that happening. But then when I looked at all the other parties at the time, I think there were 14. No, I couldn't see that happening either. And that's where it really started to solidify in my mind that it's a system that's actually broken. So I did a video explaining that. And then someone asks here, I would love to hear each of your reasons for why you couldn't join any of the other major political parties. I feel like that would be a thought-provoking exercise. Thought-provoking indeed. Keep in mind, that was a long time ago. That was, I don't know, long time ago. I can't even remember what year it was. It must have been 2017-ish. But I thought I'd try my best. I mean, I can give you a quick rundown. So I was with the official opposition. So then the ANC obviously was out of the question just because of the level of corruption, and factionalism could not even comprehend joining them. Then there was the economic freedom fighters. Controversial opinion, but I actually love Julius Malema's speeches. He makes a lot of sense. He really gets the main issues, the deeper issues in South Africa. And I always loved listening to him, even loved some of their party documents. However, at the core of everything they do, they believe in, dare I say, absolute, what do you call it? Nationalization, which is something I definitely could not get behind. IFP was interesting. If I'm not mistaken, I think I did that News 24 quiz that tried to help you see who you align with the most. And I actually think I got IFP, if I remember correctly. That was actually back in 2014. And I can't remember why I ended up not going that route. NFP, they're just an offshoot. I don't like offshoot parties because they're always going to be in the shadow of where they come from. The UTM, for me, it just seemed like the leadership was too old. Freedom Front Plus had core policy issues that I just did not align with. I think death penalty was one of them. COPE was on the downward trend, so that was not going to happen. ACDP, I don't believe that religion and the state should be combined. I think that's looking for trouble, especially in such a diverse country as South Africa. We have many religions represented here. And so for me, rather in a new system where you're directly electing people, a constituency can put forward a candidate that represents their religious values, but you have an entire religious organization trying to legislate doctrine. ARC, can't remember. A gang, also can't remember. PAC, they're also on the downward trend, so that wasn't going to happen. Al-Jamaa, again, religious, so nope. That was my mentality back then, so I couldn't get involved in any of the current ones. I honestly can't remember some of the smaller ones, what the specific policies I disagreed with at the time. It was either the leadership or it was the policy. So yeah, that is a very brief summary. Going back in time, trying to remember my mentality back then, but I think it still stands. And the other problem is just how political parties work. You've got the leadership. So it doesn't work like that in OM at all. How we work internally is totally different. And this is something people really need to learn to comprehend. We do not elect provincial leaders at all. We ask our members, yo, anyone in Eastern Cape willing to be the provincial rep? And they're mostly people who run a mile because people do not like responsibility. Also, it's an unpaid job because we're not funded. But you can change that by donating to us. So that's how we work. We work on who is willing to step up. But we don't have internal elections. Internal elections is the reason why the party political system is so rotten. So we don't do that. I'm not elected either. This is my brainchild baby, and I'm the leader. And that's it. There's no elections. And we do have provincial reps who take responsibility, but we don't have provincial reps for all the provinces yet. And we have area representatives who also take responsibility to hold activities from time to time. And then we don't have elections for people to be candidates or anything. We say, hey, we need candidates in these municipalities. Are you willing? So we very much work on that. Are you, as a citizen, willing to stand up and be counted type of mentality, which is totally different, completely changes the internal structure of the party. The conventional way it's done with the lobbying and the factions and this side versus that side and sucking up to leadership. I absolutely despise it and hate it. It works like a mafia system, and it's not good for the country, and it needs to change. So overall, I guess that was the ultimate deciding factor in realizing, okay, I want to be involved in making this country better, but I cannot be part of this toxic mess. Therefore, I woke up one morning thinking, hey, if you want something done right, do it yourself. And OM was born. Well, it took a little longer than that, but basically. So I like this, Trevescence. Hi. I like this question. Is the Constitution rigged or flawed? And I think that's a philosophical question. On one hand, it's easy to say, okay, it's rigged because all power structures, all people with power essentially have bad intentions. Therefore, it was rigged to keep South Africa oppressed. That's definitely the kind of outlook I've had for a long time in terms of not just South Africa, but just with regards to how power works, and especially having control over nations. So I think there's definitely elements of that. And then on the other end, I do think there were genuinely good, decent people trying to create a good document for the country. And I don't think they could anticipate the many different problems. Like one of the things they had, especially during the Jacob Zuma issue, when everyone was calling for him to leave, to step down, I realized that I don't think anyone who wrote the Constitution could foresee that both the president and the party and the majority seats in parliament all at the same time could be corrupt. And so, yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think the whole how government works in the modern world, well, no, actually, probably how government has worked forever, essentially, from a citizen perspective, could be called rigged. But when it comes to citizens trying to be involved in the forming of a constitution, then it's flawed. So my answer is both, in a very nuanced way. Okay, so there is, yeah, someone says, okay, this is not a question. Vote if you need a leader for some reason. You know, I do think leadership is a good thing. We just haven't seen it in a long time. We haven't seen good leadership in a very long time. I think the president specifically should be the moral compass of the country. The president should be this figurehead that you look up to, that embodies compassion and empathy and kindness and strength and resilience and all those things that a leader should have. And that just doesn't happen right now because of politicking. Very sad. Okay, what else was there? There were some long questions that I actually wanted to give attention to. This is the interesting one. It really does not matter who you vote for. Governments around the world listen to their masters. And indeed, in South Africa, the political parties will obviously accommodate their funders at the very least, especially when there's large donations. And this is why with OHM, our funding model is a little bit different. We ask our members to donate to us. So we ask for 100 rands here or 50 rands there or 200 rand there. And this is how we've campaigned and raised money for the previous elections we did and will continue to do. So we rely on lots of little donations. But when a party goes and gets a huge donation that covers all their costs from one or two people, all of a sudden it changes the dynamic, not in the favor of the people or the constituents. So the person then goes on to say, you will then own nothing and be happy, get off the voters' roll. So again, this seems to be trending lately, this divorcing of the voters' roll, divorcing yourself from the system, deregistering and everything. You can go watch my previous video with regards to what I think about that. Here's a question from Charles Levin. Hope you don't mind me saying your name on the video. How do you plan to change the current political system? If you win, what would that look like? Do we stop the political machine and put parliament and our government system on the operating table and conduct political surgery? So yes, this is probably a question on most people's minds when they come across OHM for the first time, because we have this huge proposal on how we want the system to be different. And then everyone naturally asks, how? So what if you win, they say. So if we win, if you mean we win a majority or just win a seat? Because if we win a seat, there's one path we can follow. If we win a majority, there's another path we can follow. Similar, same end result, and similar path, but obviously different according to the amount of seats in parliament. So let's say we win a majority in parliament. That would be the easiest step once there, but the most difficult to get to that point. And so what would that look like? It would look like having a constitution amended, the South African constitution amended, and we already have quite a large portion of that in draft form. So what we've actually done, we've taken the South African constitution and we've edited it, we've amended it to improve it. It needs reform. And I think this was supposed to happen a long time ago. I don't think it was supposed to be set in stone forever. Some people act as if the mere thought of changing the constitution is sacrilege, but it's not. It should be an evolving document that evolves with the people. Even say we get our dream come true and the new constitution that we've envisioned is now the new South African Constitution, we do want future generations to look at it and change it according to how society is changing as well. But at the same time, we want the fundamental values to be the same, that, of course, first and foremost, being individual liberty and the preservation of organic humanity. So it would look like having this new constitution. So we proposed it in Parliament. You need probably for that kind of change over 70% of people sitting in Parliament agreeing with those changes. So imagine that happens and it goes ahead. Then all of a sudden we're governed by a new document, which is going to outline how government is different. We'll be instituting different Chapter 9 institutions, which you can read about in our manifesto. We'll be getting rid of provincial legislature. We'll be changing the local government structures, and we'll be assigning different roles to different levels of government, according to what we've laid out in the manifesto. So that's what the first steps would look like. It'll be quite a busy time. We'd have to, what do you call it? My worst thing ever. We'd have to get a task team together to implement all of this. But that's pretty much, in summary, what that would look like. So note, OWN usually does not have any policies. We don't have policies on this and that. We have solutions based on changing the system. So some people will ask us, what's the policy on XYZ? And honestly, we as an organization don't have one, because as a political party, we have one function that we've taken upon ourselves, and that is to change the system so that you can elect representatives who are more likely to push friendly policies friendly to the citizens. So I think right now we have a lot of policies that are more friendly to business interests and friendly to increasing government power, but not to citizens, not to improving citizens' lives. So we want to create the environment in which there are better quality public representatives that can better represent your interests in government, and have accountability mechanisms so that they can be kicked out of their role if they are really not representing the people, with mechanisms to prevent the abuse of such an accountability mechanism. Okay. I like this. Such an idea would never fly with empire unless it's in their favor. True. Which is why this is the most important point, actually, I want to make this evening. And this is why the citizen side of things is so important. So like I said, with our funding model, we don't rely on big donations at all. We get little bits from our members. And the more members we have, the more funds we have to do more things. Also, you don't have to be a member to vote, to donate. Just remember that. So please look out for our bank details in the description. But just like that, and just like we don't have internal elections, we don't have career politicians, we don't have people with political ambition in our movement. We have ordinary South Africans with ordinary jobs and families who never thought they'd see themselves in politics, but understand the need and the necessity in the time that we're living in now. And so politics, and specifically organic humanity movement participating in elections specifically, is not so much about the elections themselves. It's more about elections being a measuring stick of how willing citizens are to get off their butts and do something. Because if an average citizen is not willing to hand out a couple of flyers and rock up to a voting station, well, I'm going to be pretty sure that they're not willing to do anything else. And so hosting elections in national government is one thing. It's a measuring stick of how ready South Africans are to be in charge of their own lives and be in control of their own destinies. And especially with local government elections, it's great. Even though we can't implement any of the political changes we want at a local level, the systematic changes that is, one thing it does show is that in Cape Town municipality, this percentage of people are willing to do something. In East London, this percentage of people are willing to do something. In, in some random far out municipality in the Free State or the Northwest or in Mpumalanga, we know that in each of these municipalities dotted all over the country, this percentage of people see the issue, recognize the plan, and are willing to do something about it. So it's really a measuring stick, and I think it's a useful one. And I don't think you need the entire country on board. Honestly, I think just a percentage of a population, just 2 to 5% of a population is enough to make a huge difference, to shift how politics is done. So it's not like we trying to achieve the impossible. We're very much working within the realms of what is physically possible in our lifetimes. And so, yeah, just keep that in mind, that being involved in elections is a tester of how willing citizens are to act. Because it's easy to sit behind a keyboard and say, oh, I'm not going to vote. And it's easy to sit behind a keyboard and complain. And it's easy to also just feel hopeless and just divorce yourself from politics or current affairs in general. But that's not going to result in any positive change or outcome. So ultimately, I would say, is an organization that has kind of become a container for all citizens that have recognized that we have to do something constructive. And I think that's a very beautiful thing. And I'm just glad to see our growth. Oh, in the last video, I said we had 50 candidates, by the way, and we now have over 60. So that's very, very exciting. I'll announce the municipalities very soon. Okay, let's see. More questions. Here we go. Yeah, Aaron Eustace sent a lot of questions. So let me cover some of them at the very least. He says, how would things like defense and policing work? Well, that would be the mandate of national government. We are not getting rid of government. That is something we are not doing. I believe in government. I believe people need a government structure. I believe society, in order to remain civil, needs governance. I do not believe in a utopia. I do not believe that human beings can coexist in peace and harmony. There will always be conflict. And that conflict will always eventually escalate to a point where someone is being harmed in some way or the other. Therefore, all human beings need some form of government. So now, as a person that's stuck on an earth where human beings need some form of government, I want that government to allow me as much freedom as possible so that I can enjoy life. And I want that for everyone around me. Therefore, I want a government structure that is very limited in its role and scope, yet still effective where it matters. And so at national government level, the most important duty will be first and foremost to take care of the borders of the country, which means growing the military, international relations, and so forth. Besides that, policing would also take place at a national level as well. I think it's important that we have a national framework. And yeah, the other thing that national government will take care of course, is management of infrastructure and resources. Very important. And because a lot of infrastructure is just better that it's delivered on a wide national scale than to be left up to each municipality. And it sounds like, I'm actually intrigued. I haven't actually done my research here, but I came across an article and I just scanned it. So I haven't actually gotten the details of Cyril Ramaphosa proposing a complete makeover of local governance. They're spending $1 trillion on that makeover, which is a lot of money, but it seemed to allude to that same principle. So I'm intrigued by that. How would you ever make, oh, I love this question. Pause. Let's just take it in for a moment. How would you ever make decisions if you have 400 people pulling in different directions? That's exactly how Parliament is supposed to work. It's not supposed to be ideologically broken up between different parties. It is the most beautiful thing, especially when those people are geographically represented. Then it becomes more interesting because those people, those 400 representatives, are representing literally their geographical constituents. And what is supposed to happen in our legislatures? What is supposed to happen in Parliament? They are supposed to be involved in robust debate. Isn't that a beautiful thing? They're supposed to have a strong understanding of their communities. They have to understand who they're representing and what issues are most urgent. And then when they come together in their group of 400, they're really supposed to debate it out. And I think it can be more effective without political ideology. Because right now, those individuals have to vote and make decisions along party lines. You're just a sack of meat sitting on a bench. If you're an MP, a member of parliament, a noble and wonderful member of parliament, you're a sack of meat for the party you represent. That is it. They might as well just put a robot there, and they might do that in the near future. And I don't want that kind of future. But imagine actually having robust debate, and it shouldn't be that hard, because now you have people with a different mentality. You haven't got people that are part of an ideological organization that are caucusing together and conspiring together in parliament to not pass the best bills. No, but to ensure they stay in power, because that's how the system works now. So I actually think it's going to be lovely. And they don't make decisions now. I've been in the peanut gallery up top there by Parliament when they have their sittings. They don't make decisions. They display acts of rebellion and just disharmony. They'll start just disrupting. One party will not like what the other party says, and then they'll stand up and walk out, and now there's not enough people to actually carry on with the meeting. So decisions are not being made now. So I think anything will be an improvement, honestly. How much power would be afforded to the new president? Well, this is an interesting one, because we don't want to give one person so much power that they have the capacity to completely destroy the country, but we also don't want them to have no power, that their role is basically to be the model of South Africa. So we really need to strike a balance. So we'll have to look at the current system, the way it is, and see how that can be tweaked. Okay, how would the elected candidates generate the staff and expertise to suddenly fill the roles and structure of the presidency without the support base that comes with the party? Well, this is the beautiful part, because we're removing party politics from the system completely, which I think is amazing. I'm not sure what you mean by generate the staff and expertise, because what happens with government administration, it depends what roles you're speaking of. Some are political appointments in the current system, but you put a job out. You need you need an engineer. You need someone to build a wall. You put a job description out. They are employed into the government administration structures. It shouldn't have anything to do with politics. We don't need ideology. We need builders and constructors. We need people to make things, not debate this policy versus that, not to debate this ideology versus that. Okay. What is the definition of a party? You can Google that, bro. For example, let's say I run for mayor. What would I call the people I employ to campaign? Well, those are your people. If I have to run for mayor, I'm going to ask all my friends and neighbors to help me. That has nothing to do with the party. And it works like this in some other countries. And I think it's a more accurate representation of a person's support. So I think that's better, actually. And this is the thing. They can be running various by-elections. An absolute unknown person attached to a well-known party will do better than someone that's well-known in the community attached to a lesser-known party. And that is actually a flaw, in my opinion, because at the moment, the party that has the biggest budget wins. That's the reality of our political system right now. The parties with the biggest budgets win the most seats, and that is wrong. And that individual will need money to get elected. Well, then it's called fundraising. And unfortunately, they are going to have to fundraise, just like parties have to fundraise. And hopefully, I mean, in an ideal world, they would follow Omer's model, and we can actually employ quite strict candidate funding. What's the Funding Act? We have the Political Party Funding Act. Now we can have the Candidate Funding Act. So we can make it quite strict. There are examples of legislation across the world with regards to political funding. And so we can limit how much one person or entity can donate to a candidate. We can limit how many candidates one entity or person can donate to. We can, with legislation, limit not just limit the amounts, but we can also insist that the candidate also shows how they're spending their money, which currently is not the case. So we have a Political Party Funding Act. we have to submit documents to the IEC once a year. We usually do it around June. We have to declare if we've gotten any donations above a certain amount, so we can have that for the candidates as well. But what we don't do, show how we spend money. And I think that is a weakness in the system. So when it comes to the Candidate Funding Act, we will definitely incorporate that, how money is spent as well. Not just limits on what is received, but how money is spent. And maybe Lewis, maybe there should be a limit on how many posters a party is allowed to have. It'll be very difficult to police though. We can come up with something. I think from my experience, posters are the most expensive part of a campaign. Total waste of money. They often get destroyed or stolen. Complete disaster. So you got half of them, you spend 100,000 Rand on posters, half of them get destroyed or stolen. The other half, you're lucky you can keep them. And then you're also competing with other parties that can afford a lot more posters on polls, which again results in the party with the biggest funding basically wins. So I think no more than 100 posters per municipality or something. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's a complete waste. I think the printers must love it. The printing businesses during election time must be so happy. But I think we could do well with less posters. How did I digress to posters? Anyway, let's see. What else was there? Any other questions? The voting component needs some expanding. Yes, I actually want to dedicate an entire video just to the voting component. So we've looked at the ranked voting system and we've looked at the star voting system. The ranked voting system is better in that you don't just vote for one person. You rank all your candidates your favorite candidate gets 1, your least favorite candidate can get 10. You can rank all of them. You can only choose to rank a few if that's what you want to do. So there's no real limit there. But there is a weakness in how those votes are tallied, which is why some people are calling for star vote. I mean, in the whole voting reform community, some people are calling for star voting as an alternative to ranked voting. So with star voting, that's an interesting one because you basically are rating each candidate. And when you put all those ratings together, literally the candidate with the highest score, so literally the favorite, will win. Whereas in a ranked system, what would happen is that sometimes the second or third favorites would actually fall out because of how the votes are tallied. So I will definitely incorporate these two voting systems in a video with pictures, I hope, to explain the differences. I think anything is better than the current way of voting, but we really need to get it right. I think especially when we move into an era where there aren't any political parties and only independents are being elected to public office, what's going to be important is that the voting system itself is the best we can possibly come up with. If you have any ideas, if this is your area of expertise, do let us know. Okay, someone's saying here, if I am voting, Nivi, hi, if I am voting for a president, how do I know what a candidate properly stands for? By listening to what they say. It's the same with parties. You don't actually properly know what they stand. Actually, I do know what parties stand for. They stand for whoever's going to pay their bills. That's what they stand for. They don't have a backbone. Do you know how many things are going on in the country right now that is completely disastrous for our individual lives as citizens, just like data centers that are going up around the country, just like the lack of infrastructure, just like so many things. People come to me with so many problems. As a political party, they'll approach me with the different problems that are happening in their municipalities. The party can say anything that they want to about their ideals, about what their policy documents say. At the end of the day, they're not going to do anything in your favor. They're going to only work in their favor to keep power. And that is a huge problem. So when you vote for an individual, it actually becomes much more personal because then you're holding them accountable as an individual. When it comes to parties, someone said not here, it was somewhere else. They criticized that when it comes to voting for an individual, there's no recourse. When you vote for someone that, when you vote for a party and you have someone representing you from a party and you're not happy with them, then the party can deal with them. So let's just revisit that. Let's just say that slowly. If you're not happy with a public representative in the current system, this person is suggesting that the party can then deal with them. Please do tell me when this has actually happened in your life. Do you know of any examples where this has actually worked out, where you are not happy with the mayor because they are useless, they are no-show, they don't show up to meetings, they don't engage the public, the funds are being mismanaged? If you're not happy with your councillor who's just not doing their job, I mean, what recourse do you have in the current system? Can you just phone up the party and be like, hey, I don't like your person, replace them, and the party's just going to replace them? No, it does not work like that. And me being in that mainstream politics and seeing how badly it doesn't work like that, knowing how secure their jobs are because they're in a party, anyone that thinks otherwise is seriously ignorant of how the system truly works. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. I think maybe you have to experience it for yourself to properly understand. So one of the things you can do is go that route. Call up the political party of a public representative you're not happy with and see what happens. It doesn't work out so well for you. Okay. If the president is an independent candidate, how do they meaningfully contribute to the country that would build up a good image to vote for? I mean, I don't quite understand the framework of that sentence, but I think it's important to note that it's a disaster, and I've said this before, it's an absolute disaster that the president of a party is also the president of a country. Once you're so in the current system as it stands, if we are keeping the current system, one thing that must change, well, there's many things that must change, but one thing that must change is that once someone gets elected as the president, they have to let go of official party roles, obviously. But what is the question really say? How do they meaningfully contribute to the country that would build up a good image to vote for? You know, well, this is the thing. This is where we've actually built this in, that media actually provides a support base to candidates. So how does media work now during election time? They call it equitable media access, where parties with the most seats get the best slots on radio or TV, and also the longest, the best times. And what we want to say is no. We'll have very specific and dedicated segments throughout the days and weeks during election time, leading up to election time, where parties will be given very even and equal, literally equal slots in mainstream media during daylight hours, or at least during busiest hours, not 1 a.m. in the morning. So media can play a huge role. State media specifically can play a huge role. So we are incorporating that as well, so that whoever does stand for public office during elections in whatever municipality, at whatever level, whether it's local or national, they are represented on the airwaves equally. I think that's very, very important that we get that right. Okay, I think that's a lot of questions, people. So there's a lot more questions, but I'll answer them another day. But thank you. Keep those questions coming. I think it's really important. I want people to properly understand this vision and adopt it one day. Something else that we're really, really missing, in my opinion, as South Africans overall, is just we don't have a common story. We don't really have anything that truly unites us. Politics has divided us. Religion, to some extent, has divided us. Race, obviously, with our history in this country, has divided us. So we need to find a common story. And I hope, it's my hope, that through this process, just like I said, the elections are a measuring stick for how ready citizens are to claim their power back. In that same light, when we get to the point of actually having the Constitution amendments in Parliament, presented in Parliament, I really, really hope that becomes that turning point where we start to craft a common story of who we are as South Africans and move forward, not completely forgetting the injustices of the past, but move forward knowing that together we're building something amazing, something that has not been done in the entire world, something that can really make South Africa a strong sovereign superpower, and hopefully set off a completely new generation of politics throughout the world, where things are very different to what they are now. That is my hope, at least. So I hope I answered some of your questions. I'm sure you shared some questions and concerns with others. If you have more, pop them in the comments, and I'll do another one of these Q&As in the very near future.